Admiral Hien Woo Kim stood in the command center of the Seoul Defense Fleet, watching the stars through the massive windows. Earth hung below them like a blue marble, peaceful and quiet. He had been watching those stars for 30 years, waiting for trouble that never came. Today, that changed. The alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed across every screen in the room. Lieutenant Su Jin ran to her station, her fingers flying over the controls. "Admiral, we have an emergency signal coming in. It's from the outer colonies." Hien Woo walked to the main screen. "Put it through." The screen filled with static, then cleared to show Janae Park. She was a human diplomat who lived with the Talanara people on their water world. Her face was pale with fear. Behind her, Hien Woo could see alien buildings burning. "Admiral Kim, can you hear me?" Janae's voice cracked. "We need help. Something terrible is happening. The Talanara are dying. Their whole planet is under attack." "Slow down, Janae. Tell me what you see." Janae took a deep breath. "Black ships came out of nowhere. They don't talk. They just attack everything. The Talanara tried to surrender, but the attackers don't care. They're taking people alive and doing something to them. The ones who get taken come back changed. They fight for the enemy now." Hien Woo felt ice in his stomach. "What about the Galactic Council fleet?" "Gone, destroyed 3 days ago." "Admiral, these things don't fight like us. They don't try to capture ships or take prisoners for trade. They just want to kill everything or change it into one of them." The signal started breaking up. Janae's image flickered. "Admiral, I'm sending you all the data we collected. You need to warn Earth. They're called the Void Swarm, and they're heading for the core worlds." The screen went black. The command center stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Captain Du Hyen Lee spoke up from his station. "Sir, I'm getting reports from our scout ships. 3 star systems have gone dark in the past week. No signals, no responses." Hien Woo nodded. "Get me Defense Minister So Young Choi, emergency." Priority. Within minutes, So Young's face appeared on the screen. She was in her office on Earth, surrounded by stacks of papers and empty coffee cups. "Hien Woo, what's wrong?" "You look like you've seen a ghost. Something worse. We have a war coming." So Young put down her coffee. "Tell me everything." Hien Woo explained what Janae had told them. He shared the data files that had come with her message. As So Young read, her face grew more serious. "These void swarm creatures," she said finally. "They convert living beings into their own soldiers. That's what it looks like. And they're not interested in talking or making deals." So Young was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up. "Call an emergency meeting. All department heads, all fleet commanders. We meet in 2 hours." The next 2 hours felt like 2 days. Reports kept coming in from the outer systems. Entire planets had gone silent. The few escaped ships that made it out told the same story. Black ships that appeared without warning. Battles that ended in minutes. People taken alive and returned as enemies. The meeting room in the Seoul Defense Building filled with Earth's top military leaders. General Byung-ho Park sat at the table, studying battle reports. Commander Taemin Han looked at star charts marking systems that had gone dark. Captain Ji-won Kong watched video files from the few survivors. So Young stood at the head of the table. "You've all seen the reports. What do we know?" General Park spoke first. "The enemy moves fast. They hit 3 or 4 systems at once, then move on. They don't stay to hold territory. They take what they want and leave. What do they want?" Asked So Young. Commander Han looked up from his charts. "People, living beings. They take them and somehow change them into soldiers for their army." Captain Kang stopped the video she was watching. "The survivors all say the same thing. Once someone gets taken by the swarm, they come back different. They still look the same, but they fight for the enemy. They know everything they knew before, but they serve the swarm now." So Young walked to the big screen showing the galaxy map. Red marks showed where the swarm had attacked. "What about the other species, the Galactic Council?" "That's the worst part," said General Park. "The Council's combined fleet was completely destroyed. The Christek, the Ethereals, the Stone Wardens, their best ships and soldiers are gone. The surviving species are running. So Young turned back to the group. Running where? Here, said Commander Han. Earth is one of the strongest military powers left. They're hoping we can protect them. Captain Kong laughed, but there was no humor in it. Protect them? A year ago, they called us primitive warmongers. They said humans were too violent to be trusted with real responsibility in the council. Maybe, said So Young. But right now, we might be their only hope. Admiral Haiyan Wu leaned forward. The question is, what can we do that they couldn't? The council had better technology, more ships, more experience in space warfare. General Park smiled grimly. They had better technology for fighting other civilized species. But these void swarm things aren't civilized. What do you mean? Look at how the council species fight wars. They try to capture enemy ships intact. They use stunning weapons to avoid killing. They follow rules about not targeting civilian areas. They fight like they're playing a game with rules. So Young nodded slowly, and the swarm doesn't follow rules. Exactly. The swarm fights to completely destroy their enemies. And the council species don't know how to fight that kind of war. Commander Han looked at the star charts again. But we do. We do, agreed General Park. Every human learns about total war in school. We study the old Earth conflicts where entire nations fought for survival. We know what it means when the enemy wants to completely destroy you. Captain Kong stood up. So what do we do? Defense Minister So Young looked around the room at Earth's military leaders. These were people who had spent their lives preparing for the worst possible scenarios. While other species built elegant ships for peaceful exploration, humans built warships with extra armor and backup weapon systems. While other species trained their soldiers to be precise and efficient, humans trained theirs to keep fighting even when everything went wrong. We do what we do best, So Young said. We show the galaxy what humans are really capable of when our survival is at stake. Admiral Haiyan Wu stood up. All fleet commanders return to your ships. Begin full mobilization. This is not a drill. As the meeting broke up, Captain Du Haiyan Lee approached the admiral. Sir, what if we're not strong enough? What if even humans can't stop this swarm? Admiral Haiyan Wu looked out the window at Earth, spinning peacefully in space. Then at least the galaxy will know that someone tried to fight back. And maybe that will be enough to give the survivors a chance. The room emptied as Earth's defenders went to prepare for war. None of them knew if they would be strong enough to stop the void swarm, but they knew one thing the rest of the galaxy was just learning. Sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to be willing to become something terrible. Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of his ship, the Thunderstrike. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, preparing for humanity's first battle against the void swarm. Through the main screen, he could see the other ships in his battle group. 12 human warships, their hulls covered in weapons and armor that other species called excessive. Captain, said Lieutenant Heijin at the sensor station, we're getting close to the Kepler 442 system. Should be able to see what's left in about 10 minutes? Minho nodded. 3 days ago, Kepler 442 had been home to a small Valerian colony. The Valerians were peaceful plant-like beings who had never fought a war in their 1,000-year history. When the void swarm hit their system, they had sent out a distress call. By the time human ships could respond, the signal had gone silent. Lieutenant Colonel Su-Jin Nam was also on the bridge. She was a xenobiologist, a human expert in alien life forms. The military had sent her to study the swarm and figure out how they converted other species into their soldiers. Captain Park, Su-Jin said, looking at her tablet, I've been studying the reports from other attacks. I think I understand why the Galactic Council forces failed so badly. Tell me. They've been fighting the swarm like it's a normal war. When Council forces capture enemy ships, they try to stun the crews and take prisoners. When they fight ground battles, they use non-lethal weapons to avoid casualties. They follow the Galactic War Conventions. Minho frowned. And that's bad. Because the swarm converts stunned prisoners into more swarm units. Every time the Council forces tried to be merciful, they just gave the enemy more soldiers. The main screen flickered as they dropped out of hyperspace. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The Kepler 442 system was full of black ships. Hundreds of them, moving in perfect formations around the planets. The ships looked like they were made of living metal, with surfaces that seemed to flow and change shape. In the distance, Minho could see the remains of the Valerian colony. Ships, twisted into strange new forms. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Heijin, "there are so many of them." "Captain," said Communications Officer Wusung, "I'm picking up signals from the surface of Kepler 442b. Some Valerians are still alive down there." Minho looked at Sujin. "How long do we have before they get converted?" "Based on the other attacks, maybe 6 hours. After that, they'll be fighting for the swarm." Minho walked to his command chair. "All ships, this is Thunderstrike Actual. We have civilians to rescue and enemies to destroy. Begin attack formation Alpha." The human battle group spread out, each ship taking position for maximum firepower coverage. Unlike the elegant formations used by Council fleets, the human formation looked crude and simple. But it was designed for one purpose: to destroy as many enemy ships as quickly as possible. The Void Swarm noticed them immediately. Dozens of black ships turned toward the human fleet, moving with unnatural coordination. No signals passed between them that human sensors could detect, but they moved like parts of a single organism. "All weapons, lock onto the nearest targets," Minho ordered. "When I give the signal, fire everything we have." On other human ships, similar orders were being given. Captain Dongwu Choi of the Relentless was targeting the largest enemy ship. Commander Seo Junyu of the Defiant was preparing to launch fighter squadrons. Major Haijin Yoon was getting her Marines ready for boarding actions. The swarm ships opened fire first. Beams of dark energy lashed out across space, striking the human vessels. The aliens watching from hidden positions expected the human ships to be destroyed instantly, like all the Council fleets had been. Instead, the human ships kept fighting. The Thunderstrike's hull was scarred by enemy fire, but her thick armor held. Sparks flew across the bridge as systems overloaded, but backup systems came online immediately. Lieutenant Heijin was thrown from her station when a blast shook the ship, but she crawled back and kept working. "Return fire!" Minho shouted. 12 human warships opened fire at once. Unlike the precise, focused beams used by Council forces, human weapons were designed for maximum destruction. Plasma cannons, missile clusters, and particle beams filled space with deadly energy. The first wave of swarm ships died in seconds. Their living metal hulls, so effective against Council weapons, were torn apart by the raw firepower of human war machines, but more swarm ships kept coming. "Captain," said Sujin, studying her sensors, "the swarm is learning from this battle. Each wave of ships is more resistant to our weapons than the last." Minho nodded. "Then we don't give them time to adapt. All ships, ramming speed." What happened next shocked every alien observer in the system. Instead of retreating when their weapons became less effective, the humans accelerated toward the enemy. Captain Dongwu Choi's ship, the Relentless, was badly damaged and losing power. Instead of trying to escape, he aimed his ship at the largest swarm vessel and hit full thrust. The collision destroyed both ships in a ball of fire visible across the system. But it also took out the swarm command ship that had been coordinating. "The enemy fleet, this is insane," transmitted one of the hidden Valerian observers. "The humans are using their own ships as weapons." "Commander Seo Jun, you heard the transmission?" "That's not insane," she replied calmly as she ordered her own damaged ship to ram an enemy formation. "That's winning." The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the Kepler 442 system was full of wreckage from both sides. Of the 12 human ships that had entered the system, only 4 were still capable of fighting. But the Void Swarm fleet was completely destroyed. Major Haijin Yoon led the rescue mission to the planet's surface. Her Marines found the surviving Valerians hiding in underground shelters, terrified but unharmed. The plant-like aliens looked at the human soldiers with something like awe. You came back for us, said Elder Veltar, the Valerian leader. The council forces fled when they saw how many swarm ships were here, but you stayed and fought. That's what we do, Hyjin said simply. As the human survivors regrouped, Sujin made a disturbing discovery. Captain Park, you need to see this. She led him to the wreckage of one of the swarm ships. Inside, they found conversion chambers filled with a strange biomechanical fluid. But more importantly, they found prisoners who had been taken from other systems but not yet converted. The swarm doesn't just convert people immediately, Sujin explained. They study them first, learn their biology, their psychology, their tactics, then they create specialized conversion processes for each species. Minho looked at the rescued prisoners, beings from a dozen different species, all scheduled for conversion. What about humans? Have they tried to convert any of us? Sujin checked her scanner readings. Not yet. But Captain, I found something else. Human biology is ... doctrine process that works on other species doesn't seem to work as well on us. Why? I think it's because we evolved on Earth. Our planet was so dangerous that we developed incredibly strong immune systems and resistance to biological attacks. The swarm's conversion process might not be effective on humans. As they prepared to leave the system, Captain Minho Park sent a message back to Earth Command. Admiral Kim, this is Captain Park reporting. First engagement with Void Swarm was successful, enemy fleet destroyed, civilians rescued. But sir, we need to talk. The swarm is more dangerous than we thought, but also more vulnerable to human tactics than the Council species realize. We can hurt them, Admiral. And maybe we can win. Back on Earth, Admiral Hyun-woo Kim received the message with mixed feelings. The humans had won their first battle, but at a terrible cost. 4 ships lost, hundreds of crew members dead. By Council standards, it was a disaster. By human standards, it was a victory that proved something important. The Void Swarm could be beaten. Now they just had to figure out how to do it on a scale large enough to save the galaxy. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly through the surviving Council species. For the first time since the swarm appeared, someone had fought them and won. The primitive humans from the Death World had done what the galaxy's greatest civilizations could not. The galaxy was beginning to understand that maybe, sometimes, civilization needed to be defended by those who remembered how to be savage. Admiral So Min-young looked out at the fleet gathering around Earth. Ships filled the space around the planet as far as the eye could see. Human warships floated next to converted cargo vessels, mining ships equipped with military weapons, and even luxury cruise liners that had been turned into hospital ships. Admiral, said Captain Woojin Kim, approaching from the communications station, we have confirmation from all sectors. The second wave is ready to deploy. So Min nodded. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Park's victory at Kepler 442. Word had spread throughout the galaxy that humans could fight the Void Swarm and win. Now, desperate alien species were arriving at Earth every day, begging for protection. What's our total count? So Min asked. 800 human ships, plus about 200 alien vessels that want to join our fleet, Wu Jin reported. The aliens are eager to learn our tactics? So Min smiled grimly. I bet they are. On the bridge of the converted mining ship, heavy lifter Captain Yoon Park was training a crew of gossamer wing pilots. The gossamer wings were a species that looked like giant butterflies with crystalline wings. They had evolved from flying creatures and were natural pilots, but they had never been in combat. Listen carefully, Yoon told them through the translator. Your ships are fast and agile. That's good. But you've been flying like you're afraid to get hurt. Wing Commander Silkara fluttered her wings nervously. Captain Park, our species has never fought in wars. We don't understand how you can be so calm about ... dying. Yoon looked at the alien pilot with patience. We're not calm about dying. We're calm about doing what's necessary to protect our families. There's a difference. She brought up a tactical display. Your people have been trying to avoid the enemy, using your speed to stay away from danger. That's smart for normal combat. But the swarm doesn't fight normal combat. They swarm you with numbers. So what do? We use your speed for hit-and-run attacks. You dive in, hit them hard, then get out before they can react. And if your ship gets damaged and you can't escape, double quote, Jian paused, then you make sure your death counts for something. The Gossamer wing pilots looked at each other with their large, multifaceted eyes. The concept of sacrificial attacks was completely foreign to their peaceful culture. Meanwhile, in the engineering sections of the fleet, something remarkable was happening. Human engineers were working alongside crystalline builders, a species made of living crystal that could manipulate energy and matter at the molecular level. Chief Engineer Sang-Ho Lee stood in front of a group of crystalline workers, holding up a human plasma cannon. Your people build beautiful energy weapons, he told them. Very efficient, very precise. But they're designed not to hurt anyone unnecessarily. Crystal Singer Brightatone resonated with confusion. Why would we want to hurt people unnecessarily? You don't, Sang-Ho agreed. But sometimes you need weapons that hurt people very necessarily. Let me show you. He led them to a test chamber where they had set up targeting dummies. First, he shared a standard crystalline energy beam. The beam struck the dummy and created a small, precise hole, exactly enough to disable an organic target without killing it. Then he fired the human plasma cannon. The dummy exploded into fragments. Your weapon is designed to stop an enemy, Sang-Ho explained. Our weapon is designed to make sure the enemy never threatens anyone again. Brightatone-esque crystal body flashed with disturbed colors. This seems excessive. Against normal enemies, yes. Against the Void Swarm, it's barely enough. Across the fleet, similar training was happening. Dr. Yun-Young Lee was teaching alien psychologists about combat stress and trauma treatment. Colonel Yuna Shin was showing alien commanders how to coordinate massive fleet battles. Commander Jae-Hun-Oh was demonstrating orbital bombardment, techniques that made peaceful species deeply uncomfortable. But the most important training was happening on the command ships, where human admirals were explaining the philosophy behind human warfare. Admiral So Min-young stood before a gathering of alien military leaders in the main briefing room. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, some in environmental suits, others breathing different atmospheres, all united by desperation. You've all asked me the same question, So Min began. How do humans win battles that you cannot? The answer is simple, but you won't like it. She activated a holographic display showing the galactic map. Red zones marked areas controlled by the Void Swarm. Your species fight wars like they're sports competitions. You have rules about what weapons you can use, what targets you can hit, how many casualties are acceptable. You fight to win while causing minimal damage. A Valerian delegate raised a leaf-like appendage. Those rules exist to prevent unnecessary suffering. I agree, So Min said. Those rules make sense when you're fighting other civilized species who also follow rules. But the Void Swarm doesn't follow your rules. They don't care about minimizing casualties or preserving enemy ships. They fight to completely destroy or convert everything they encounter. She changed the display to show battle footage from recent swarm attacks. Look at how they fight. They don't try to disable your ships, they destroy them. They don't take prisoners for exchange, they convert them into more enemies. They don't negotiate or retreat, they keep attacking until they win or are completely destroyed. The alien delegates watched the footage in uncomfortable silence. So how do we beat them? Asked General Stoneheart of the Granite Federation. By fighting the same way they do, So Min replied. Total warfare, no rules except victory. No concern for preserving enemy assets, no mercy for those who threaten our survival. Crystal Singer Brightatone-esque body flashed red with distress. But that makes us like them. No, So Min said firmly. They fight that way because they want to destroy everything that's different from them. We fight that way to protect everything that makes life worth living. The method is the same, but the purpose is completely different. Captain Woo Jin Kim stepped forward with a datapad. Admiral, we have a situation developing. Long-range scouts. are reporting swarm movement toward the Altair system. So-Min looked at the pad. Altair was home to over 2 billion beings from multiple species. It was also one of the major refugee centers where survivors from destroyed worlds had gathered. How long do we have? 18 hours before the swarm reaches Altair. So-Min turned to the alien delegates. This is it, your first real test. We can reach Altair in time to intercept the swarm, but only if we leave immediately. And when we get there, we fight by human rules. Total commitment, no retreat, victory or death. The delegates looked at each other nervously. Then Elder Veltar of the Valerians spoke up. Admiral Young, 3 weeks ago, my people were hiding in caves while the swarm destroyed our world. Captain Park's humans came back for us when everyone else had given up. If this is how humans fight, then we will learn to fight this way too. One by one, the other species agreed. Some were enthusiastic, others reluctant, but all of them understood that the old way of fighting had failed completely. Good, So-Min said. All ships, prepare for immediate departure. This is Operation Deathworld, our first major offensive against the Void Swarm. As the massive fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Dr. Eugene Lee was making final preparations. In the fleet's research section, she had been studying the swarm samples recovered from previous battles, trying to understand their biology and tactics. Admiral, she called to So-Min over the communication system, I've discovered something important about the swarm. Tell me, they're not just destroying civilizations for resources. They're trying to create a galaxy where every living thing is identical to them. They see diversity itself as a threat that must be eliminated. So-Min considered this information. So this isn't just a war for territory or resources. No, it's a war between two completely different ideas about what life should be. They want perfect uniformity. We represent chaotic diversity. And only one of these ideas can survive. Exactly. As the fleet began moving toward Altair, Admiral So-Min Young realized that they weren't just fighting for the survival of individual species or planets. They were fighting for the right of life to be different, complex, and unpredictable. The Void Swarm represented the ultimate expression of order. Every being identical, every action coordinated, every thought shared. It was efficient, logical, and completely inhuman. The human-led alliance represented the opposite: messy, chaotic, unpredictable life that refused to be organized into neat categories. It was inefficient, illogical, and absolutely worth fighting for. All ships, So-Min broadcast to the fleet. We jump to hyperspace in 30 minutes. When we reach Altair, we show the swarm what the galaxy looks like when it fights back. Captain Du-Hyen Lee stood on the bridge of his reconnaissance ship, the Deep Strike, as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of swarm-controlled territory. What he saw through the main viewscreen made his blood run cold. Dear God, whispered Navigator Inho at the sensor station. How many ships are there? The space around them was filled with Void Swarm vessels. Not hundreds like they had seen before, but thousands. They moved in perfect formations, their black hulls seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. At the center of the fleet was something massive, a structure so large it could have been mistaken for a small moon. Captain, said Lieutenant Yoon Kim from the communications station, I'm picking up signals from that big structure. It's not just a ship, it's some kind of processing facility. Du-Hyen moved to her station. What kind of processing? Converting captured beings into swarm units. And Captain, the energy readings suggest it's been operating for a very long time. Maybe centuries. Du-Hyen felt a chill run down his spine. Send all this data back to Admiral Kim immediately. Use the quantum burst transmitter. I don't care if it gives away our position. As the data packet shot toward Earth, Du-Hyen kept scanning the massive swarm facility. What he found made the situation even worse. Captain, Inho called out, I'm detecting life signs inside that structure, lots of them. Swarm units? No, sir, these readings match the biological patterns of species we thought were extinct. The Christek, the Ethereals, the Stone Wardens, they're all in there. Du-Hyen realized what they were looking at. It's not just a processing facility, it's a prison. They are keeping the conquered species alive for some reason. Before anyone could respond, alarms started screaming throughout the ship. Swarm patrol. Ships had detected them and were closing fast. All hands, prepare for emergency jump, Du Haiyan ordered. We need to get this information back to the fleet. As the Deep Strike jumped to hyperspace just ahead of pursuing swarm fighters, the data they had collected was already reaching Earth. Admiral Haiyan Woo Kim read the reports with growing anger and determination. They're not just killing the species. They conquer, he told his staff. They're keeping them alive as some kind of resource bank. Every civilization they've destroyed, every being they've converted, they're all still there. General Byung-ho Park looked at the tactical displays. That changes everything. This isn't just about stopping the swarm from advancing. We can actually save the people they've taken. Defense Minister So Young-choi joined the meeting via video link from Earth. What do we need for a rescue operation on that scale? Admiral Kim pulled up fleet deployment charts. Everything we have and everything we can borrow from our alien allies? We're talking about assaulting the heart of swarm territory? The risk? Total, if we fail, humanity and all our allies are finished. But if we succeed, we don't just stop. The swarm, we reverse everything they've done. Meanwhile, Major In Ho Young was leading a very different kind of mission. Deep in swarm territory, on planets that were supposed to be completely controlled by the enemy, he had discovered something amazing: survivors. Move quietly, he whispered to his team as they crept through the ruins of what had once been a Christek city. The converted patrol units come through here every few hours. Behind him, Sergeant Ga Yun-han carried medical supplies for the refugees they were hoping to find. Corporal Taeho Nam had weapons and ammunition for anyone willing. To fight back, they found the survivors in the deepest underground tunnels, hiding in places the swarm hadn't thought to search thoroughly. When Major Young's team found them, the refugees couldn't believe what they were seeing. Humans? Whispered Crystal Singer Dimolite, her body barely glowing with the faint energy that kept her alive. But this is swarm territory. How did you get here? The same way we're going to get you out, In-ho replied. Very carefully and with a lot of explosives. Over the next several days, In-ho's team made contact with survivor groups throughout the sector. Christek refugees who had learned to hide. Their energy signatures? Ethereal communities that had gone into deep mental hibernation. Stone wardens who had literally buried themselves to avoid detection, but most importantly, they found survivors who were angry. We have been hiding like frightened children, growled War Leader Granite Fist, a stone warden whose rocky hide was scarred from battles with swarm conversion teams. Show us how to fight back, In-ho smiled. First lesson, forget everything. You knew about civilized warfare. He began teaching the alien survivors the tactics that humans had developed over centuries of brutal conflict. Guerrilla warfare, sabotage, psychological operations, and most importantly, the willingness to accept that some battles could only be won by those willing to lose everything. The Stone Wardens took to it immediately. Their species was naturally tough and aggressive, but they had been held back by their own civilization's rules about minimizing casualties. When In-ho showed them how to make improvised explosives from mining equipment, they began planning attacks that would have horrified their peacetime leaders. The Christek survivors were more hesitant, but they had skills that made them incredibly effective saboteurs. Their ability to manipulate energy meant they could overload swarm systems in ways the enemy couldn't predict. The ethereals were the biggest surprise. Their psychic abilities, which they had always used for peaceful communication, turned out to be devastating weapons when used against the swarm's hive mind network. Your people tried to use your psychic powers to communicate with the swarm. In-ho explained to Mindsinger Soft Whisper. That's like trying to negotiate with a virus. Instead, use those powers to attack their coordination. Attack their minds? Exactly. Confuse them, feed them false information, break up their formations. Make them as chaotic and disorganized as we are. As these resistance cells began their work, the effects rippled throughout swarm territory. Conversion facilities exploded without warning. Patrol ships lost contact with their commanders. Supply convoys disappeared completely for the first time. Since the swarm began their conquest, they were facing an enemy that didn't fight by the rules they understood. Back at the swarm's primary facility, something unprecedented was happening. The hive mind that controlled all swarm operations was experiencing something it had never felt before. Uncertainty. Dr. Eugene Lee, analyzing intercepted swarm communications from her research station, was the first to recognize what was happening. "Admiral," she reported to Hyen-Woo Kim, "the swarm's coordination is breaking down. They're making mistakes, responding to false signals, attacking their own units." "What's causing it?" "The resistance operations plus something else. I think exposure to human tactical thinking is somehow disrupting their hive mind. They've spent so long converting species that think in predictable patterns, they don't know how to handle humans and human-trained allies." Admiral Kim considered this information. "So our chaotic way of thinking is actually a weapon? The most effective weapon we have. The swarm operates on perfect coordination and shared consciousness. But humans are individuals who can act independently, make unexpected decisions, and adapt to changing situations without waiting for orders. And we're teaching that individualism to the other species." "Exactly. Every alien we train becomes a little more unpredictable, a little more human in their thinking, and the swarm can't process that kind of chaos." As reports continued to come in from the resistance operations, Admiral Kim made a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. "Send word to all human fleets and allied forces. We advance on the swarm's primary facility in 72 hours. Operation Deathworld is now a full-scale liberation campaign." "Sir?" asked Captain Woojin Kim. "What about the risks?" "If we lose this battle, then we lose fighting for something worth dying for," the Admiral replied. "But we're not going to lose. The swarm thinks they understand warfare because they've defeated every civilized species they've encountered. They're about to learn the difference between civilized warfare and total war." "And what's the difference?" Admiral Kim looked out at the stars, thinking of all the species counting on humanity to save them. "Civilized warfare is about defeating your enemy. Total war is about making sure your enemy can never threaten anyone again." As the human-led armada prepared for the final battle, every being in the fleet understood that this was more than a military operation. It was a test of two different philosophies about what life should be. The swarm represented perfect order, complete unity, and absolute control. Humanity represented chaotic diversity, individual freedom, and the right to be different. Only one of these ideas could survive the coming battle. Admiral Hyen-Woo Kim stood in the command center of his flagship, the Indomitable, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Around them, space was filled with ships from dozens of species, all following human tactical doctrine for the first time in their civilization's histories. "Admiral," reported Captain Ji-Won Kong from her position at the tactical station, "all fleet groups report ready. We have 800 human vessels, 600 allied ships, and confirmation that the resistance cells are in position." Hyen-Woo nodded, looking at the massive display showing the swarm's primary facility. The structure was the size of a small planet, covered in defensive weapons and surrounded by thousands of enemy ships. According to their intelligence, it contained the converted forms of every species the swarm had conquered over the past several centuries. "This is it," he said to his staff. "Today we find out if the galaxy's faith in humanity was justified." On the other side of space, Captain Tae-ho Nam led his suicide squadron toward the heart of the swarm facility. His ship, the Last Stand, had been loaded with every piece of captured swarm technology they could find, along with something the enemy had never encountered before, the complete genetic and cultural database of Earth. "Remember," he told his crew over the intercom, "our job isn't to survive. Our job is to get close enough to that facility to upload everything we know about human diversity, human chaos, and human refusal to give up. If we can get that information into their hive-mind, we might break their perfect unity," finished Commander Subin Lee from the engineering station. "I just hope the price isn't too high." Tejo looked at his crew, humans who had volunteered for a mission they knew they wouldn't survive. The price is always too high, but sometimes you pay it anyway because the alternative is worse. The battle began when resistance cells throughout swarm territory activated simultaneously. Major In Ho Young's team destroyed a major conversion facility, sending a column of fire visible from orbit. Crystal Singer Dimolite overloaded the power grid for an entire sector, plunging swarm installations into darkness. Mind Singer Soft Whisper launched a psychic attack that confused hundreds of swarm coordination nodes. The chaos gave the main fleet the opening they needed. All ships, begin attack run, Admiral Kim ordered. Remember, no mercy, no quarter, no retreat. We end this today. The human-led armada dropped out of hyperspace around the swarm facility like an avenging storm. Unlike the careful, precise formations used by previous galactic fleets, the Allied forces came in waves of controlled chaos that the swarm couldn't predict or counter effectively. Captain Minho Park, now commanding a battle group of mixed human and alien ships, led the first assault wave against the facility's outer defenses. All ships, focus fire on the shield generators. Don't worry about preserving enemy technology. We're here to destroy, not capture. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, designed to keep fighting even when badly damaged, absorbed punishment that would have destroyed council vessels and kept returning fire. Allied ships, trained in human tactics, fought with a ferocity that amazed their own crews, but the swarm fought back with everything they had. Commander the Yoon Kim, leading a squadron of converted cargo ships, found herself facing a swarm of enemy fighters that moved with perfect coordination. Her ships were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had something the enemy didn't understand: unpredictability. All ships, ignore your assigned targets, she ordered. Pick random targets and attack independently. Confuse their targeting systems. The tactic worked. The swarm fighters, programmed to respond to coordinated attacks, couldn't adapt quickly. Enough to handle dozens of ships acting like individual chaos agents. Deep inside the swarm facility, Dr. Eugene Lee was making a horrifying discovery. The conversion chambers didn't just change people's loyalty, they were being used to create a single, perfect being that combined the best traits of every conquered species. Admiral, she reported over the battle communications, the swarm isn't just collecting people. They're trying to build the ultimate life form, one being with the strength of the Stone Wardens, the energy manipulation of the Christek, the psychic powers of the ethereals, and the intelligence of every species they've conquered. How close are they to completing it? Very close. Maybe hours. Admiral Kim made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships, concentrate fire on the facility's central core, maximum firepower, all weapons. Sir, protested Captain Kong, there are millions of prisoners in there. Innocent people from dozens of species. And if we don't stop this now, there will be billions more. Fire everything we have. The concentrated firepower of the entire human fleet struck the facility's core like the fist of an angry god. Explosions rippled through the massive structure as conversion chambers, power systems, and life support networks overloaded simultaneously. But even as the facility died, Captain Teho Nam's suicide squadron was making its final approach to the swarm's central hive mind. Upload commencing, reported Commander Subin Lee as enemy fire tore through their ship. I'm dumping everything: human history, human art, human music, human chaos, human refusal to be categorized or controlled. The information hit the swarm hive mind like a virus. For creatures that had evolved perfect unity and shared consciousness, the concept of billions of individual humans making independent decisions was literally incomprehensible. The hive mind began to fragment. Throughout the battle zone, swarm ships suddenly stopped coordinating their attacks. Some continued fighting, others began attacking their own allies, and still others simply shut down completely as the controlling intelligence collapsed into chaos. Moral, Kim watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the perfect order of the swarm fleet dissolved into confused fragments. All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to reorganize. The battle that followed was less a fight than a cleanup operation. Without their central coordination, individual swarm units were no match for the human-trained Alliance forces. Ships that had been unstoppable when working together became easy targets when acting alone. When the shooting finally stopped, Admiral Kim found himself looking at the wreckage of the largest structure ever built by a hostile alien species. The swarm facility was a ruin, its conversion chambers silent, its hive mind scattered to the stellar winds, but the real victory came when rescue teams began finding survivors in the facility's lower levels. Beings from species thought extinct, for centuries emerged from hidden chambers and sealed compartments. The swarm had kept them alive as a resource bank, never imagining that this would be their own downfall. Elder Veltar of the Valerians was among the first to greet the rescued prisoners. "It's over," he told a group of traumatized Christek survivors. "The humans came for us. They came for all of us." In the weeks that followed, as the galaxy began to recover from the swarm war, a new understanding emerged about humanity's place. In galactic civilization, Captain Duhyan Lee, now promoted to admiral, stood before the reformed Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species, many thought extinct just weeks before, filled the chamber. "The question before us," he said, "is what kind of galaxy we want to rebuild. Do we go back to the old ways with careful rules and civilized warfare that leaves us helpless against existential threats? Or do we accept that sometimes to preserve peace we need warriors who understand war?" Crystal Singer, bright of tone, her body glowing with renewed energy, spoke for many when she replied, "Admiral Lee, we have learned something important. Civilization is not about avoiding conflict. It is about being strong enough to protect what we value." The new Galactic Defense Force, established by unanimous vote, was organized along human military principles. Mixed species crews trained in human tactics, led by officers who understood that sometimes the price of peace was the willingness to wage total war. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. Species throughout the galaxy began to value diversity, independence, and the right to be different, concepts they had learned from watching humans fight. Dr. Yoon-Young Lee, now Director of Galactic Cultural Studies, documented these changes in her final report on the Swarm War. The Void Swarm represented the ultimate expression of order, perfect unity achieved by eliminating everything that made life interesting, she wrote. Humanity represented the opposite, chaotic diversity that refused to be organized or controlled. The war between them was not just a military conflict, but a test of two fundamentally different ideas about what life should be. The galaxy chose chaos, individuality, and the beautiful mess of billions of different beings trying to figure out how to live together. It chose life over perfection, diversity over unity, and hope over certainty. The swarm cried out for order, and the galaxy answered with humanity's greatest gift, the understanding that sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is become temporarily uncivilized to protect everything that makes civilization worth having. Years later, when new species joined the galactic community, they were taught the story of the Void Swarm and humanity's response. They learned that the price of freedom was eternal vigilance, and that sometimes, to protect peace, you needed people who understood war. The galaxy had cried out for help.